This video is brought to you by Zarrakan Productions, an umbrella group composed of over 10 shows and an archive of over 5,000 videos covering a wide variety of topics. Please go to zarrakan.com for a complete listing of video links, social media feeds, and opportunities to support our content. Thank you for your time, and may I present another Zarrakan production. Welcome to Virtual World Traveler. I am your camera cat showing you some of the amazing places I have seen. This is a video I made about Art of Struzan, the studio experience, by Hollywood Art Museum, at Sansar. Struzan is an American artist known for more than 150 movie posters, which include all the films in the Indiana Jones, Back to the Future, and Star Wars film series. He has also painted album covers, collectibles, and book covers. Please join me as I explore Art of Struzan, the studio experience.
goodness. Well, I don't have a story about it because I worked with a director who knew what he wanted and didn't make changes, so it was a delight to work with. It's like the guy that came from New York, a first-time director, Eric, and he had just made a movie. Because I'm the poster artist, he called me and asked me if I would paint a poster for his movie. And I knew he had no money and he was a first-time director. And he said, sure, I'll do it, So he sent me some photos and told me what it was about, and I painted it for him, and they used it. And then he called back one day and said, he came out here. Now, I forget the order of it, asking questions. But he asked if he could make a movie about me, do a documentary about me. And it turned out that it's because I'm the only guy he knew in the industry. And he didn't know what to do for the next movie he wanted to make. So he thought he'd make a documentary about me. And he asked me, he said, yeah, you can do anything you want. Just make it nice. I don't want all the dirt and the crying and the anger and stuff. Just make it a nice movie, So the problem was the poster. Do I really want to paint a poster of myself about me, So we went round and round. So I asked Christian to do it, and they took some really beautiful photographs. That's just what I did, and I know everybody did and wanted those kinds of posters, but I knew everybody couldn't afford it. And, it's not that I take pity on people. It's just that I'm happy to make people happy. It's because it's the only way I know how to make people happy is painting pictures for them. So when they'd ask, I just do it, And that I do it for free for them. I did it all the time. It's just not one or two. I'm sure I did dozens and dozens of them. But it's just something to do for people. And I like doing it. So it's no loss. I wouldn't have done it when I was really young because we were so hungry. But I had a house now. I never thought I would have a home for my family, It's just like, I've been blessed, so I can surely afford to make a poster or two for people that just ask. And that's the reason I do it, because I can and I want to. And I want to make them better. And look what it did to Eric. It's just, he made the movie about me, which I thought was delightful. But then he went on to do another couple of documentaries. That's what I do. I just paint the posters. There's a lot of people make movies that they don't get studios to release them, or they don't have backing or money or anything. So, but they want a poster from me. Well, so Dark Tower, yeah. Well, Frank just wanted that in the movie because the story's so cool. And he was just saying somebody should make this movie, because we're painting the poster. You now make the movie for it, The hero of the movie is supposed to be me, and they came in and they've photographed the studio, and then the set designers sort of built it. They used a lot of my prop stuff, the desks and the drawing boards, and made it look like that, but not really. So I guess they didn't think it was fun looking enough. But Thomas Jane came over. We became friends. He was the actor that was playing me, and I showed him how to use the brushes because he didn't know anything about it, and the airbrush, and showed him how to paint with them. And the best thing was that after the premiere and they were walking out, I had told him that, he embarrassed me because there was a guy on the set doing what I told him how to paint. And he says, no, that's not the way an artist does it. He tests it on in his hand first and then paints it. And I said that to him, and it just, he was so ashamed because, he came over, and I was babysitting his girl while he was here painting and trying to show him how to do it, and then he didn't do it the way I showed him. He did it like some set designer showed him how to do it, It was... I went over and they told me about this. I didn't know anything about the books. They were making the movie, and there's going to be 7 of these movies. And the basic reason they wanted me to come in was they wanted them all the posters to have a theme. And they said the only thing they could relate to was Indiana Jones. Whenever you see an Indiana Jones movie poster, you know what it is. And that's what they wanted for Harry Potter. So I was going to design a look and a feeling to the first one that will carry on for 7 movies. It's a cool job, So that's where I got the job. And I did a number of comps, normally do, and they bought one, and they printed the poster, and it was beautiful. In fact, it was named the poster of the year because it was the one that people liked most for the year. And then what happens in the industry is they're always changing the guard, and the people that had that idea for 7 of them and looking all as a part of something really wonderful, and then having the first one be all the wonder they wanted, in came the new team. And when they come in, they don't want to continue making what was made. They're going to control it now. So they dumped the whole concept, and to really dump it for real, from then on, all they used was photography. And the second one, the original guys were still there, and they asked me, okay, here's the second one, and they showed me the movie, so I saw what was in it, and blah, blah, blah. And I was working on it and did the comps, and they loved them, and they were approving them when the change came about. The first team had already approved the painting for the second one, or the comps, and then the new team came in. And I had worked so hard and liked it so much, I just painted it for myself because I wanted to do it. Well, I warned Guillermo when I first worked with him that don't put a lot of truck with the studios. They will do what they want, not what you want. He thought, I'm the director, I get what I want, and I told him that's not how it works. And he didn't believe me, but then he found out that was true. So he just started doing it himself. He would call me in directly, and we'd do it, and he'd have it printed, and that's the way it went, and that's the way it would be. And Pan's Labyrinth was that way. And it was so good. Well, you see it in your book, but he spent 2 years in Spain making this picture, paid for it out of his own pocket, Pan's Labyrinth, brought it over here, and it's just been edited, but it was still all in Spanish, all the voices, and he invited just me and Dylan over to the first screening of the movie. And we watched it, and afterwards we sat down with him, and he says, I just want to know one thing. Is there anything you didn't understand in the movie? And we both said, well, just the relationship. We didn't know the relationship to the guy and the girl. And he says, that's the only thing. He says, and then he told us what he believes. He believes, and why his movies are so successful, that movies are a visual medium. It's not a verbal medium. You should be able to see the story just from the pictures, not the words. And that's why he wanted to know, is there anything we didn't understand? And it was just that one little piece, which you couldn't anyway, because they never say, hey, sis, or hey, wife, or whatever it was, So how could you understand? So after that night, he said, I want to come over tomorrow morning and show you my idea for the poster. So I said, okay. So he sat right here, and I sat right there. And he goes, okay, here, let me, going through his papers, let me show you what I think. And I said, no, let me show you what I think. Because I got the idea after watching the movie. I see the movie, so I know the spirit of it. And Guillermo, so I had done a little rough sketch of it, and I said, let me show you mine first. So I showed it to him. He goes, that's it. And that was the end of it. That was it. I painted it, and that was it. And it was printed, and that was his poster. He was just like such a good man. He knows what he wants. He trusts, and that's what I did. Just same way for Hellboy, except that was the one where I told him, now, Guillermo, if you involve the studios, they're going to want what they want, and that's what they did. They had all these comps and other studios painting them and doing all this crap. The only reason I got to do it in the end is they couldn't make up their minds which one to use, and they said, do this one. So it was kind of like back with George, this is the best one, let's do that, So I said, just you interpret this one. So that's how that one came out. But the second one, we were sitting in a restaurant for Hellboy 2, having lunch. And he goes, oh, I have I want you to do my new poster for Hellboy 2, So it was really the napkin at the restaurant thing. And he just said, it's big robots and a little bitty Hellboy at the bottom, and that's all it is. So I went home, painted it, and there it is. So it's just, we communicate and understand what we're looking for. he had gone to the studios getting people to design posters for his movie, you know, and he could never find anything. Nobody ever made anything he liked, you know, and so he kept going to different studios, design studios, to find somebody that could please him, and he couldn't find anybody. He finally went to this one little out-of-the-way place that happened to be run by my son. And Rennie was talking to him because he's the president of his own company, and he says, I can't find anybody that can please me to do my poster. And my son did as I do. I said, so what is it you're looking for? He says, I want my poster to look like an Indiana Jones poster. And my son goes, I think I can get that for you. And that's how I got the job. Nobody was pleasing him, but once my son got him to say what it is he was looking for, it was no sweat, you know. So I did 3 comps, you know. I just did those for him, from the pictures from the movie and blah, 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 blah. And he picked the one he wanted, and I painted it up as he didn't make any changes. He just painted up the one I painted up the one he wanted, and he was happy as pie. And then a week later, I get this letter from him. He didn't call in person, but he wrote and told me. He thanked me and he said, I think this is the best poster ever painted. So the man was happy. And it's one of the few times anybody's ever said thanks. Movie studios just don't do that, but he did. And I treasured his letter because it was... The history of it is probably out there for everybody to learn. As far as what generated the idea was he was going to play the 3 movies back to back or in the same theater, and it was at Christmas time. And he had gone in and changed the movies digitally, because I don't know how many years afterwards that was, but when he first made the movies, he wasn't able to do the things he wanted because they just weren't physically possible at the time. But by the time he was doing the 3 back-to-back, showing them, he had the digital ability to change the scenes and make them the way he always wanted them to be. And so that's what was going on. So he called me and, yes, it's another one of those late night calls, and it was from Lucasfilm, and it was George, and he said he wanted paintings for the 3 movies because they're going to be in new form. And the more he talked, and he was sitting there with a bunch of his other designers, the more they talked about it, the more I said, George, you're missing a great opportunity here, because they had done photographic posters for it, and they didn't like any of them. They didn't work, and he wanted me to paint them. And they were telling me about the 3 movies and blah, 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 blah. And I told George, I said, George, you're missing a great opportunity here. You're running 3 movies that we all know, and you're running them together. Let's make a triptych. Make one for everything. 3 posters and run them together, just like you're going to the movie. Make a triptych. And he goes, what a great idea. How do you see it? So right on the spot, I had to start designing it over the telephone. And fortunately, he had his other artists sitting around, and as I described what I was thinking on each of the 3 posters, they were trying to sketch out something. And when I was done, he said, this is perfect. Do it. That was that. Do it. So I didn't do any comps. I didn't do anything except just start painting those pictures. And I had to have one done every week for 3 weeks in a row. 1 week without a comp, just start painting them. And I had people standing at the door the whole time waiting for me to deliver them. And I would paint one and give it to them, and then I had to paint the second one. And in my mind, they were going to be flowing together. So how was I going to make them flow together when I didn't do a comp? I don't have a picture of it, and it's gone. So I did that on the second one and on the third one. And it was all during the holiday weekends. Whenever George would call me to get me to work on a poster, it was during the holidays. So that's how I always worked, and that's how those came to be. They were shown individually at the theaters when they were made, but later, because they were designed to be one piece, put them on the computer and brought them together and made, triptych. The Thing. Interesting story. Well, every poster I do has its own story, and this one's different than all the rest, like all the rest were different from this one. But 9 o'clock at night, living in Lake Arrowhead, 100 miles out of Hollywood, I get a call from the studio. Hey, Drew, do you have time to do a poster? Sure. You remember, this is almost word for word, you remember, did you ever see the movie The Thing from the 50s? He says, yeah, I saw that. So that's it. That's what we want you to paint is a poster for the new thing. And they said, we need a comp by morning, and then the finish the next day. So I said, okay. That's all I got. I got no pictures, no story, no nothing. I didn't know who was in the movie, anything. That's all I had was what he said on that phone conversation. So I made up something out of nothing, which is, when I say that, then you can see why it looks that way. It's something out of nothing. There's some strange creature in the snow. I posed for it. In those days, if there's a person in it, it's me or my wife or my child, because we were the cheapest models we could find. So that's what I did. So I did. My wife shot a photo of me. Fortunately, we lived up where it snows in 5,000 foot level, and I put on my snow gear and I just posed. And she shot a picture, and we had a dark room in our laundry room, and she developed it and printed it out for me, and I did a drawing, and we faxed it. That's how long ago this was. We faxed it to the studio, and they said, fine, paint it. It's easy as that, no changes, just do it. So I started painting, and 24 hours later, the delivery boy came to the front door and took the painting away. It was a long day of painting. And the damn thing has lived forever since. Part of the neat thing was, along with the Star Wars simplicity, because of the people I was working with, George, and then the Muppets, because of the guys there were also sweet, and they were all artists. This was the same way. No meddling, so guess what? It's got the original power that I painted into. Well, the good story about raiders, I put the Ark of the Covenant in it, and this had pillars go up, running up the side of where they, whatever it was. And I put some Hebrew lettering at the top, and nobody said anything except George, when he got it. And he's going, I don't mind that. It looks authentic, but does it really say anything? I said, oh yeah, that says something. He said, what? But it was God's name in Hebrew, So he said, that's cool. And then I signed it too, on the same pillar, did the little S symbol. So it looks like more hieroglyphics or something. George Lucas, if you've read his biography and everything about him, wanted to be an illustrator, except that his family couldn't afford to send him to Art Center. Went to the movie school at USC, and he didn't illustrate. And that's why he loves illustration. And I did ask him face to face why he always uses illustrations and never used photography. And it's in some of the books where he says it's because it's more magical. You can get involved with it. Where a photo just there, so what, But a piece of art has its own heart and it speaks about the movie, and that's why he used me to do it. And whatever that one was, the second indie. In the upper left-hand corner, there's the bad shaman or whatever he is, and he's holding, I don't know, bleeding heart up or something, and he's screaming, you know. And George loved the piece, except he had one question about it. How come you painted that guy with sharp teeth? Because in the movie, he's just a guy with regular teeth, and I just took it on myself to give him, you know, animal teeth. And he said, I love it. We should have done that in the movie. That's great. So that's how just open-minded he really is. So I still like it. I've never heard anybody else say anything about it. You know, you just accept it. Yeah, well, of course. I just didn't notice that in the movie, but it's in the poster. But I did all the indies and the advances and everything, you know. Most people respond to their favorite poster of all time is the portrait of Harrison Ford as Indy, the big one where he's just up front with the whip across his shoulder. He says, that's my favorite poster of all time, because it's just so with you, you know, in your face. Here I am, we're together, you know, come join. Well, the Muppet Movie, that Jim Henson had made his first movie, and he came to Hollywood to get the finest movie poster he could get, and he went to Seininger Advertising, who were producing the best movie posters at the time. And Tony Seininger, when he met Jim Henson, said, wait, the thing to do easily is to walk around his studio, which was not a fine art studio. It was a commercial art, so it had many levels and many workers in there. And so Jim Henson just walked around, and they were all posted on the walls. So Tony gave him a pad and a pencil and said, write down the names of the posters that you like, and we'll call in those artists. And we'll get them involved with your poster. So Jim walked around. It took him, you know, an hour or more. And when he came back to Tony's part of the office, he gave him the list, and Tony took a quick look and went, this'll be easy. They're all the same artist. So I got the job, which was wonderful because I was a poor, quiet little guy. And I had never been to New York in my life. I didn't travel, I didn't go anywhere. So I went with Tony, and we traveled to New York, and we went to the Henson Studios, and we met Jim and Frank and everybody there. And we talked about what we were going to do, and then we went into their photo studio and shot photos of all the Muppets that we were going to use and put them in the poses we wanted and lit them. And it was like a real professional experience for me. It was wonderful. Those meetings, we came up with the idea of the kind of the, if you can take note of the Gone with the Wind pose with Piggy and Kermie in the clutch, you know, and then did the rest of the crew in the Studebaker, which was just a fun thing in the movie, and it really works well with that. And the background, I needed a background for it riding across the countryside. So at the time I lived in Lake Arrowhead, California, which is 5,000 feet up in the mountains. And it was a quiet place in the forest and everything. So I just went down the street and shot a picture of where I lived, and that's literally the background. And then I put a sign on there, and it says Hollywood, however many miles. If I wrote it truthfully, it would have been like 100 miles, but I don't think I did. Not just every Muppet poster, but every painting of the Muppets from that point on, as long as Jim was alive, I did it. He didn't allow anybody else to paint the Muppets but me. And he said the reason was I paint them like they feel to him. So I gave them a soul and a spirit. So, the first Star Wars poster, 1977. I didn't get the job. I had a friend I went to school with, Charlie White, and he was a rather well-known airbrush artist. He painted wonderful airbrush, mechanical things, and the airbrush does such a beautiful job of that. One day I got a telephone call from him, and he told me he had this job he's working on. And it would involve him painting a bunch of mechanical things, but it also needs a number of portraits. He didn't do portraits, and he called the one guy he knew that did portraits, which was me. And I said, yeah, I'd love it, I need the work. I said, I only have one caveat, is that the word? Yeah, to add to it, accepting that, and it is that I'll paint any of the portraits you wish, but I want to watch you paint with the airbrush because I've never seen an airbrush before. I don't know how they work, and I'd like to just watch you and pick up on how to do it. And he said, yeah, sure, that's no problem. So that's how I got the job. Fortunately, he just lived, a few cities over here in Southern California. And so I spent some time with him when he was airbrushing, and I came in on the design of the poster, and I painted it with him. Charlie had never done a movie poster before, and he didn't know the qualifications it takes to make it into a poster. Like, it needs a title on it, it needs the billing, which is all the people in it, and who produced it, and what studio, and blah, blah, blah. So you need space for that. And when George saw the poster, or the painting, he loved the painting, and then he informed them of the need for the space for the titles and the billing. So we had to change the whole poster again. But the way we did it was to put it on a bigger piece of board. So the original was just the color painting that I did in oil, and his robots and stuff he painted. And then so we put it on a bigger board, and we said, we'll make it look like it's wild posted, which became George's happiest moment. He loved the idea of wild posting. But then it gave me opportunity to put Obi-Wan in there, and I guess he's the only one additional portrait. And we did the torn paper and stuff, and then left the blank space for the billing. But that was the funny thing for Charlie too, because he was painting on this very thin paint. And then I painted on the same board, on the same piece of art, in oils. So I had to gesso just the part I would be painting so that the oil wouldn't seep over and destroy his piece. So it was a technical curiosity for sure. It was for years George Lucas's favorite Star Wars. Back to the Future. Well, another sweetheart job. They called me up to come in to talk about another project. And I went because I knew it was part of Amblin, which is Steven Spielberg. And I didn't know who I was going to meet, or their position. I went in, told them what I was there for, and they sat me down in the waiting room. Sat there for the longest time, so obviously putting me in my place right off. And they said, okay, he's ready. Go through the doors, turn left, walk all the way down the end of the hall, and his office is at the end of the hall. So I went in and looked down the hall, and the door was open to the office at the end of the hall, and I could see into the door, and I'd see this guy sitting behind a desk. It was like set up to be a movie shot or something. So I walked down, and I walked in the room, and it was Bob Zemeckis. And he goes, Drew, at last. I've waited all these years to finally make a movie worthy of your poster, and I finally done it, and it was Back to the Future. And so got started on it. And I don't recall much at this point, but I did a lot of comps for the movie because they were just deciding on what they wanted to see, or what they wanted to sell in the poster. In those days, they didn't ask me what I wanted. They just told me what they wanted. So I did a lot of comps and comprehensives, which are ideas that aren't just thumbnail sketches, but they're really developed ideas. And well, they went along, and I do recall I did, I don't know, 6 or 7 really tight things. And at one point, Steven Spielberg had an idea. Did you ever see the My Three Sons TV show? Remember the opening with showing their legs and, a tapping foot? I think that would be cool for this. So I did one thinking it was, that didn't tell you anything about the movie. And of course it didn't go very far, but after a while, I know what happened. I wasn't the only guy working on this. In those days, they hired a number of artists so they could get different perspectives on it. And there was somebody else that did, and I don't know where the idea came from, but somebody else had painted this one with the car, and Michael standing next to the car. So they had done a photo session of that idea, and they really fell in love with the idea. So they called me and said, if there's anybody that can make this work, it's Drew. So they gave me the concept, and I made it work. I made it work for 3 movies. The first movie was just him on the street. I think I just faked it. It was just on the street, and I put some street lights up, and that was about it. The only real thing was to get the guy standing in the car, and then have two was the same thing, and the easy solution was to put two guys in it instead of one. So Doc Brown was in there, and the first time I ever met an actor. I met Michael and Chris on the set while they were shooting 3, not 2, and because things are always late because it goes on. I spent the whole day on the set up in Northern California in the Gold Country, just sitting on the porch watching them film the movie. So I was sitting on the set in the whole of Hill Valley with all the buildings and the big clock tower and the whole bit. And I sat there all day. We had driven all the way up from LA to Gold Country, which is in Northern California. And just before sunset, they were finished because they did everything they did for the day. So, okay, you can do your shoot. What? So we put up a seamless background, put in lights and stuff. And then the two stars, Chris and Michael, had to go to the dressing room and change their costumes because they wear different costumes in 2 than they do in 3. And turns out, different wigs, like not Michael, but Chris did, So they come on to where we're shooting outdoors. This was not in a studio. It was just outdoors in Hill Valley. And so they came, they stood in front of the seamless, and the cameraman was all ready, and they set up the lights, and they were standing there, and I started to tell them how to pose, take your classic pose, but, Chris stand behind him, doing what he's doing, and all that, and everybody's going, Drew, you want us to do this? And Drew, do you want us to do that? It's a light right, Drew? And kept using my name for some stupid reason, but all of a sudden, Michael throws his hands up, breaks the pose, and starts walking toward me. And it was like 20 feet between the camera and him. And he walks right up to me and looks me right in the face and goes, "Are you the Drew?" I says, "I'm Drew." And he goes, "I'm your greatest fan." And he's been that ever since. But anyway, that's the first time I ever actually got to shoot the stars in the movie. So it's really third one was the one that stumped them all. What do we do now? And you can see in the comps that they did some really silly stuff, and there were lots of other silly things too, besides sticking a horse looking around and silly. I think they were stuck on it that was in the time of the Old West, you know. But the first idea I had was the third person should be Mary Steenburgen, you know. It should be Doc's girlfriend. And they just, no, didn't want to do that, didn't. We were on the cowboy set, so that was 3, but I was working on the poster for 2. And then immediately I started to work on the poster for 3. And they were shooting that on set here in Universal Studios. So it was a little easier. I didn't have to travel, and I already knew the guys and everything. So they post again for me for the third poster as well. And then, of course, to get Mary, I had to get her later, even earlier than them accepting that she was going to be in it, but I got her anyway, and I got her in the costume and in her face and stuff, so I had something good to paint from. So I went through this whole bunch of comps, which is really nice to do though, because I get paid for everything I do. So I didn't mind that, because, you know, my family would have a mortgage payment this month. So what happened was they never went with the Mary Steenburgen idea. So it was done. They sent it to the press without anything there, and it was being printed. And somebody, I don't know who, went, "This looks stupid. Why not put Mary in?" So they called me and said, "We need Mary Steenburgen. We need her right now." You know, so the finished art that I had done was at the printer. I didn't have it in front of me. I didn't know the scale. I didn't know the poses, except that I had drawn them earlier, and the color, nothing. So I had to paint her like she was actually standing in the scene with her hand on Doc's shoulder and in the right position and everything. I did that without not getting to see the painting. I cut her out, as I always do, you know. Actually, I didn't. When they did it, they cut her out mechanically, or what do you call it, digitally, and put her in the poster. And when I got the original back, I cut her out and glued her into the original picture. So the original third version, she's actually standing in the poster, and it's very hard to